Today on Live Wild, I'm joined by Cork spoken word poet and performer Daragh Fleming. Daragh is part of an exciting new wave of Irish voices using poetry to explore identity, belonging, and the human experience. With a background in linguistics and applied psychology, he's deeply interested in mental health and the power of language to shape how we see ourselves in the world.
I think creativity is to humans what making honey is to bees. That's what we do. We innovate, we create stuff, we build societies. That's our thing, we create. So everyone can do it. And I think just opening up our minds to that kind of reality is positive for our mental health. I think every single person on earth is creative. I just think we've been kind of educated to think as creativity is this very narrow thing. And that narrow thing being art. So it's either acting or writing or painting or sculpting. It's these, and that is obviously a form of creativity, but how you cook is creative, how you drive to work is creative, how you dress yourself is creative, how you have a conversation is creative. There's creative elements in all of our days, and I think looking at or coming at life from a creative lens adds this kind of wellspring of well-being, because when we create something new, it's inherently good, even if it's created from a negative experience.
He's also the creator of the TEDx talk Creativity, the answer to crafting hope, where he explores how creativity can help us navigate difficult times and reconnect with hope. This is a conversation about words, creativity, and the courage it takes to speak honestly about being human. Daragh's work is thoughtful, kind, and quietly revolutionary, I might say. The kind of art that invites us to feel a little more deeply and see the world a little more clearly. Just a gentle note that we do touch on themes around mental health in this episode, so please take care while listening. One of the first ones I found of you was about the son and what it means, and I have a son and a daughter, so I really was like, oh my god, what it means to be a man growing up. And then you do a recent one about the girls, and I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. So whatever, it's choices.
I'll do the daughters one because it's funny, because the If I Ever Have Boys was a response poem to Lucas Jones, who I'm a big fan of, and I'm now friends with as a result of that. And then about a week after that, I wrote If I Ever Have Girls, and this was last summer.
Yeah.
After I released it, I wrote If I Ever Have Girls. But I was a bit hesitant with it because I felt like it was easier for me to talk on the male experience, obviously being a man. I felt like there wasn't as much potentially thin ice or saying the wrong thing, because I was like, I'm a man, I know this experience. So then when I wrote the girls one, I just wanted to sit with it. Because I was like, I want to make sure I'm saying the right thing. And originally it was the same kind of idea of if I ever have girls, they'll be dangerous women. And I was like, that actually doesn't really make sense, because you're not playing with the idea of danger, because no one really thinks women are dangerous, or women aren't typically dangerous, whereas men can actually be violently dangerous. So it doesn't really make sense. So I sat with it and played with it, and then it became Feared by Weak Men, which felt more appropriate, because I was like, well, no one's going around being women are dangerous. So to play on that meaning in the same way didn't really have the same effect. So it just took me a longer time to get it to a place where I was like, okay. And then I sent it to my mother, and I sent it to my girlfriend and a few of my friends, being like, if you read this, is there anything in it that you'd be like, that's kind of fucked up, or that's a little weird?
Yeah.
Because I just wanted it to be right, because I as I said, I'm not a woman, so I don't have all the experience naturally. But it turned out well.
Turned out really well, because being a woman and having a daughter, I was like, it was really lovely. Really, we need to keep all of this. Everything you've just said, we're keeping in the podcast.
Totally.
Started already. Sorry, Daragh.
That's perfect.
Daragh, you're welcome to the Live Wild podcast. We've already started. We've already got stuck in. There's loads of questions for you. Loads and loads of questions. I suppose the first one is, when did you realize that words had power for you?
I mean, words have always been part of my life. As soon as I learned to read quite quickly when I was a kid, maybe around 3 or 4, and then once that happened, I was always reading. And as a kid, I was far more like naturally into the more like imaginative writing. So like a lot of fantasy, like the Sorcerer's Apprentice, Eragon, Harry Potter's,
Mm.
all that kind of stuff. And I just absorbed books. Like I was like I read as off like, and it was a different world as well because we didn't have as much screens and there wasn't
Yeah.
like smartphones. So like there was less to be doing. It was either like read or play PlayStation or something, you know. And
Mm,
my
mm.
PlayStation time would have been limited because my parents were like, you can't be playing PlayStation all the time.
Good
So
for them.
yeah, for sure. So then I just loved reading and I loved doing like, you know, jigsaw puzzles and all that kind of stuff. So they've really just been part of my life since the get-go. And then, you know, played around with writing as a child, like wrote poems and short stories. Um, and purely just because I enjoyed doing it. And I always really enjoyed like when I got into secondary school and like in a late primary school where you'd be like part of the test would be to like make up a story and like write, you know, a couple of hundred words of the story.
Mm.
And I always just really enjoyed that. Like I didn't really ever see that as like a test, you know, you're going into an
Mm.
exam and it's like you're allowed to write a short story. I was like, this is great. Like this isn't, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
I love that. And then I suppose in secondary school, I was still reading, but I moved away from how intensely I was reading because I started playing sport and, you know, going through puberty and other things become far more important than books
Mm,
at that age, which is totally fine. And then in college, came back to it.
mm, mm.
And, you know, have spent the last kind of 12 years trying to build a writing career. Um, which is challenging, you know, you as an actor will know like
Mm.
getting off the ground is the hardest part. But like it's interesting because and I mentioned this in one of my essay collections that like my mother when I was like 10, we were on the way to school and I was about to get out and she just kind of turned to me randomly and she was like, you know, I think you're going to be like a writer or a journalist or something like that. You're going to do something with writing. And sure, I was 11 and I was like, yeah, whatever, whatever. Because
Mm.
in my mind, like, you know, I was obsessed with these like writers like Owen Colfer, who wrote Artemis
Yeah, he's
Fowl and
great.
Christopher
Yeah.
Paolini. And like, to me, because I wasn't really into like football, to me, they were like the equivalent of like professional football players.
Mm.
So I was like, yeah, it's nice to dream about becoming a professional football player, but it's not realistic. It's not going to happen. Like it's a pipe dream. So I was like, yeah, whatever. And then as I got older, I was like, okay, maybe I will try and do this. And I mean, so far so good. But yeah,
Yeah.
I've always found it interesting that my mom kind of knew before I did. She was like, yeah, this is what's going to happen.
It's so true. You see it, and I think, and fair play to your mum for saying it to you, and probably nurturing it along the way as well. Because I think you see a spark in a child, and sometimes it just takes that little seed to be planted, which is just a word. And here we are
Yeah.
talking about the power of words, and look what it's done.
Mm. Yeah, no,
Um,
for sure. Like, and yeah, and like it was totally like nurturing it as much as possible because I remember like when I was maybe 11 or 12, my parents sat me down and I thought I was in trouble, like, because you know, you're being sat down by both your parents at the same time. I was like, what did I do? Trying to figure out what I'd done. And they were like, look, you're going to have to join a library because you read so many books that it's actually like a financial strain. So we're going to have to start borrowing. And I was like, oh, that's fine. Yeah, I'll join a library. That's no problem. So that was fun.
uh, that's lovely. What was the first poem that you wrote that you actually felt like, oh, this could be something. I could make something of this.
Good question. I suppose like when I started writing poetry, it wasn't like with the intention of like publishing poetry. It was actually kind of like a journaling technique. So I struggled with depression for about 4 or 5 years from the age of like 17 to 21, 22. And when I was kind of like recovering from that and going to therapy, my therapist was like, you should start journaling.
Mm.
And I'd like known about journaling and I'd tried it before. And I was like, yeah, okay. And my journaling style was just quite brief and observational and like short. And they just kind of came out as like when you looked at them, you might think they were poems. Like I wasn't really intending to write poems, but that's kind of what they looked like. And I remember I wrote one poem. I can't even remember what it was called. But it was something about like I've been scrolling through the lives of people I've never even met for the upteen time, and I like kind of like feeling. It was like a lot about like feeling lonely and feeling
Mhm.
isolated. And I had a friend in London who was the poetry editor for a small literary journal, and we were just friends. And I was like, "This one isn't like doesn't seem too bad." So I sent it to her, and I was like, I was just looking for feedback to see if it was like good or bad poem. And she was like, "Yeah, this is really good. I think we could possibly like publish this."
Oh
And like
wow.
that wasn't like the intention I was going to. I was like, I just want feedback. You're an actual poet, and and yeah, and then it got published in their journal, and that was kind of the thing of like, okay, like I mean, I didn't really know because I didn't have like the knowledge or like education in poetry to know if it was a good or a bad poem, and that kind of still to this day is a bit of a challenge. But like, I was like, I think this might be something, but I don't know,
Yeah.
so I'll send it to someone who might know, and then they published it, and like to this day, like it happens so often now where like a poem I think is like whatever will go mad on Instagram
Yeah.
or people will love it. And then a poem I think is really good will just kind of fall on its face. So like it is a
Mm.
case of like I don't really know sometimes. Sometimes I do know, but like for the most part I'm like this could be good or bad. The only way we're going to find out is if people read it. So
But also, I think with that creative process, I always try to stick to the process of if I like it, I'm going to publish it in some way or perform it in
totally.
some way. I tried not to second guess an audience,
Yeah.
will say.
Yeah, no,
So that takes
totally.
away the good or bad element. It's like, well, do I like it? Yeah, I do. Well,
Mhm.
okay, then that's, because
Yeah, and that is the way I've like learned to operate because I'm like, well, yeah, I feel like there's something powerful in this for me.
mm,
Like
mm,
it speaks
mm,
to something I'm experiencing, so I'm gonna put it out there and share it with people. And then yeah, sometimes it resonates, sometimes it doesn't, but that
yeah.
isn't the point of writing it. Like I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
because if you
yeah.
get caught in the or like performing anything, like if you get caught in the trap of like writing for your audience or or like
Or
performing,
numbers or likes
yeah,
or
then it kind of
applause.
like I feel like it
Yeah.
stops becoming art in a way, then it kind of becomes like a commodity for,
Um,
just to like get validation where it's like, and obviously that can be a part of art, but like I think if it's the main motivator, then it kind of changes what it is.
Absolutely. And it's such a balancing act because if you are to have a career in the creative arts, you kind of need part of that for longevity. But it's
Yeah.
the balancing act of like, okay, do I stay true to myself as a creative artist and do what I really want to do, or do more of the same of what others may think they want from me? It's so,
Yeah.
yeah, it's such a mess in the mind sometimes.
So yeah, and like and the thing with the creative like career in the creative arts, like you kind of have to get comfortable with no one caring or liking
Yeah,
anything for a
yeah,
long
yeah.
time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or even criticizing. I mean, that's even
Yeah.
more uncomfortable. That's a
Mm.
real storm to have to weather. But luckily
Yeah.
you don't get that, so that's fine.
Yeah, well.
I don't get it these days either. Maybe early in my career I got a bit of it, but I don't get it these days, thankfully.
Mm. God.
Um, do you remember the first time you performed in front of a crowd? Like, how did you feel? Because you talked in your TED talk a little bit about like feeling numb, and I thought that was really interesting. Such a really succinct way of putting it. Had that dissipated by the time you started to perform? Did you could you register stuff in the body when you were giving your first live performance?
Yeah, so that kind of I started coming out of that maybe like 9 years ago when I started like going to therapy for my depression and
Mm,
journaling and writing poetry because the poetry kind of the main reason I find it useful is because like because I'd been numb for so long I was coming back to emotions but they were really still like at the start they were really like faint
hmm.
um and I couldn't like I knew I might have been feeling something but I often couldn't like identify it
Yeah. Hmm.
and the poetry helped me to be like this is what you're feeling. Like at least this is how it feels in your body and this is how it feels in your mind. And we can label this anxiety or we can label this happiness. And that really helped me to like fan the flame of that emotion. So
Mm.
by the time because I didn't start like, it was kind of like, because there's two ways of, I suppose, sharing poetry. You can go to a poetry reading where I feel like it's less performative and you're just reading your work, which can be like, as a entry point, is actually brilliant because you
Yeah.
don't feel like you have to be like this big thing on stage. And I'd say in the early days of that, I wasn't really feeling a lot, or I was still like learning the emotions. But by the time I started doing like full like spoken word performances, I was very much back feeling things,
Mm.
which means I was like feeling quite nervous about performing, which I actually like. To this day love, because like if I'm not nervous about a performance, to me that kind of tells me I don't care enough to be here, and I think I
Mm.
should always care if I'm going to go perform.
Mm.
But in the beginning, there wasn't much emotion, and then I was also doing a lot of like talks and like mental health talks, and usually just from lived experience, from
Yeah.
like kind of about like losing a friend to suicide and experiencing my own depression. And I remember my first talk was actually during my first big talk, anyway, it was during the pandemic with MTU.
Mm. Oh, okay.
Uh, but I had to do it online
Mm-hmm.
uh, from my like really like cramped bedroom. I was in a house share, and I was still like really, really, really nervous. I was so nervous, and I was like going onto a Zoom call to talk to people, and I was still really nervous.
Mm.
But I was still happy that I felt nervous, because I was like 2, 3 years ago I wasn't feeling anything, and I'm like nervous to go on a Zoom call to talk to people about like
Yeah.
whatever. And so that's great. Like that, I find that's like really, I love that, because like feeling negative emotion is better than feeling nothing. Because like
Yeah.
when I was feeling nothing, it was genuinely like you're not really alive. You're just
Mm.
conscious. There's no real like, there's nothing like pulling you into actually living your life. Because I think you need emotion to get excited and get frustrated and get stressed. And like without that, you're not. You're just kind of coasting.
That's so interesting. Even when you say feeling negative emotion, which really realistically is probably positive emotion, is better than feeling nothing. It's so
Mm.
true because at least it's giving you a signal to what you need to look at, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
What would you say to somebody who's listening to this now and actually is that's resonating with them? What would you say to them?
Um, there's kind of two elements, I think, especially, well, not especially, but it happens a lot in Irish culture where like we prevent ourselves from feeling stuff. So part of my numbness was, this kind of disconnection due to depression, but
Mm-hmm.
also part of that numbness was like I was refusing to allow myself to express emotions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So like what I would say now to that is like, you're a human being, so you are going like you're always feeling emotion, whether you want to accept it or admit it. And I think the most important thing is like whatever way you're feeling is to allow yourself to feel it. Like
Mm.
you really do have to like be active in feeling your emotions and like accepting it for what it is. Because I think, especially when it comes to like men, there's a conditioning that has happened for generations where every negative emotion is expressed as anger,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
anger is like socially acceptable for men, even though it can become massively problematic and leads to violence. It's still, for whatever reason, socially acceptable. So it's kind of getting into the nuance of like, okay, you're expressing this as anger, but what you're actually feeling is rejection or disappointment or sadness, and to actually get underneath the anger and feel the sadness. Because they're
Mm.
different emotions, but we're allowed to be like, oh, I got rejected from a job, or the girl I like, the woman I like doesn't want to go on a date with me. That's rejection. But we can scream at a TV to express that rejection, but we're just being angry, and it's not the same
Mm.
emotion. Um,
Mm.
so I
Mm.
feel like, one being like admitting to yourself that you're feeling an emotion, and then actually expressing that emotion as it is rather than the socially acceptable way to express it, I think is really important.
Mm. And in a healthy way as well. So if there's grief or sadness, like let's sit with it in a healthy way rather than,
Yeah.
trying to numb it out. Or
Yeah.
if there's
And
anger.
sometimes that's just saying it to you, like often it's just me saying it to myself out loud. Like I'll be
Yeah.
sitting inside and I'll be like, I'm feeling jealousy. I'm feeling stressed, I'm feeling disappointed, and being like, okay, let's just sit with this for a little bit.
Wonderful. Yeah.
And I think that
Yeah.
really helps rather than being like just letting yourself kind of like become the emotion or like the jealousy or the stress morphing into anger because that's an easy emotion for us to express. It's like, no, I'm actually just feeling jealous. I wish I was doing that, but I'm not. And that's okay.
Mm. Mm. That's self-regulation 101. It's great.
Mm.
Yeah. Um, like your work, it touches on identity, belonging, Irishness. What do you think it means to be a young Irish voice right now? The world is changing so much. It's
Mm.
like what age are you now, Dara?
You're 31.
You're 31. Okay, yeah. So I mean, God, there's 15 years between us. When I was even 31, or if I was in my 20s, I just feel like the world is such a different place now, even
Mm.
more so. What do you feel like it means to be an Irish voice now?
Um, what do I think, yeah, it's interesting. I think we're in such an amazing place for Irish culture and art, and I
Mm,
think it really is becoming this kind of like, for the most part, obviously there's negative voices as well, but for the most part, it's becoming this kind of like, I don't know, like this place of like, okay, we're not going crazy. Like
mm,
this,
mm,
this is happening, and it is insane that it's happening. Like whether you're talking about like the genocide
mm,
in Palestine or like reflecting on the stuff going on in the States. Like I think a lot of our art and culture is kind of like not pretending all of this is fine.
yeah.
We're like, no, this is insane. Like what's happening is crazy and it's terrible. And I think Ireland's become such a hinge point for that conversation.
Mm,
Like we're not like the great thing about Irish culture, and I think it comes from our kind of like rebellious genetic inheritance is like we're not satisfied with ignoring problems and we will talk about it. And even like on the global scale or even like domestically, like we will talk about all the things we're not happy with, things that can improve.
mm,
And I think that's such an important role to play in the world because not every country is at a position to do that. And
mm,
therefore their art and their artists won't be able to do it either because we're all at different levels of development. So I think like it could be easy for Irish artists to be like, oh, we'll just ignore that. But we don't. We
mm,
really get stuck in and are like, no, this isn't good enough. This isn't
mm.
okay. And I think that's a really important role to play. And like I'm just, one drop in that ocean. And like I think the great thing about being a an Irish artist today is there's so much talent in Ireland. Like,
Yeah.
you're seeing it all over, like whether you're looking at like award season for acting, like Irish artists are everywhere, music we're everywhere, writing we're absolutely everywhere. Like it's kind of like, yeah, I've always found it interesting that like for such a small place we generate so much artistic talent.
Mm.
Um and sometimes that can be overwhelming because you're like there's so much good coming out of Ireland, like how am I going to fit in here? But there is room for everyone. And I
I
think that's really
I 100% believe that. I don't believe in the competitiveness when it comes to creativity because I think even if you took the same writer or the same actor and you gave them material and said, "Okay, write me a story or perform me a story," every actor will do something completely different. Every writer will do something completely different, even with the
yeah.
same bones. So
Yeah.
everything is original that's coming. So I don't believe in the competition. I believe in like just this wellspring of huge creativity that's coming out of Ireland.
Yeah, totally. Like, and a good example of that is like, my poem If I Ever Have Boys, which is a response to Lucas's poem. Um, it's on the same concept, like this idea of dangerous men and then
Mm,
being like gentle, like, but we both came from completely different angles and it resonated with different audiences. So like we're writing about the exact same thing,
mm.
but we wrote it in completely different ways,
Yeah, yeah,
and like that's just the kind of to your point, like no one's doing the same thing twice because it's not like, if I write about my experience with depression, I'm not the first person to write about their experience with depression. Thousands and thousands of people have, but no one's probably done it the exact way I'm going to do it. And that's
yeah.
true for every artist. So yeah. Totally agree with you.
You could put it this way, if you and I were alongside each other in a kitchen and they gave us the same ingredients, we'd still make something different with the same
Yeah,
ingredients. It's the same, that's I suppose a more succinct way of putting it.
yeah.
Um, Cork. We have to talk about Cork, Daragh.
Massive, massive.
I mean, it is a really strong creative culture. I mean, like the artists that have historically come out of Cork and are still coming out of Cork is pretty amazing.
Mm.
Um, how do you feel the city shaped you, into the kind of artist that you've now become?
Um, it's a great question. Well, first and foremost, Cork has the best waterstones on earth. I think that has to be
Oh,
said.
yes. You know what? Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I agree with that.
and that was like my main kind of hub of reading for all of my life.
Yeah.
And then went on to the library in Glanmire, which is my parents kind of live
Uh-huh.
by Glentown. So, but like, yeah, I think, but how it shaped, I suppose, like when I started coming into the writing community and writing, I found because Cork isn't massive, so
Yeah.
like the writing community in a small place is quite small as well, but
Mm,
you end up, you know, at the same table as people who are slightly further in your career, way further ahead, are like at the place you want to be getting, and everyone's like treated as equal. Like we're all welcome
mm,
to this space, and we're all here to do the same thing, and invariably, like you see the same faces at every event, and everyone's supporting each other's like book launches and readings, and it's just this really like encouraging environment. And I feel like when you have that, it's easy to put yourself out there because you know there's a whole community of writing that's backing you. And I
mm.
think if you get to, and I think that's kind of not unique to Cork, but because it's not a massive place,
Yeah, yeah. The city is small. The city
yeah,
center is small.
and you
Yeah.
don't end up having this kind of fractured communities where like there's some writers over here and there's some writers, like everyone's kind of in it together because there's not that many of us to begin with.
Uh-huh.
Whereas like I live in Dublin now and like there's more fracturing because it's way bigger and there's more
Okay.
like
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
like not everyone's like always around, but you have your different sub communities, I suppose, which is, obviously has its place as well. But I think that's what's been really helpful about Cork is that like, you know, you're like some of my best friends in writing are people who I met on the Cork scene and who might be like 10 years further down the road than me, and we can share information and support each other and read each other's
Mm,
work. And I think
mm.
that has really like one shaped, my confidence in writing, but also shaped how I interact with other artists because it's always coming from a place of encouragement and giving back and supporting each
Mm.
other as opposed to this kind of gatekeeping or like I don't want you to know about this opportunity because I mightn't get it. Like there's not really any of that going on because that's the
Yeah.
culture I kind of grew up in, which is great.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Um, where do your poems begin? Like, do they begin with an image, a line, a word, a thought, a feeling? Like, if you were to pick it all
Yeah,
apart, where do you think
it's
it
kind of
starts?
like a yeah. I one of my like my most feared questions is like, what is your creative process? Because a lot of the time I don't know.
Yeah,
A
yeah,
lot of the
yeah,
time I don't know.
yeah.
It's kind of a bit of a black box, but I think a lot of the time it is a turn of phrase or I'll be chatting to a friend that we'll just be having a chat and then someone will say something that'll like spark an idea and then I'll get into my notes and just write down the idea and then I'll come back to it later. Like it's interesting because like when I write prose or like a novel or short story or whatever, I'll always be like, right, I'm sitting down now to write this for 2 hours or whatever it is. But with poetry, it's the exact opposite. Like I can't sit down and be like, I'm writing poetry for 2 hours. It kind of always has to come in. And it
Mm,
kind of like the inspiration for the poem hits you and you're like, okay, there's a poem here. I need to write this poem. So it's always
yeah.
a bit more impromptu and all of a sudden, like it's like Gutubban poetry. Like it's like always sudden, but it always comes like when you're not looking at it, I think
Mm,
is the main thing where it's like I'm out walking my dog or I'm in the shower or I'm having a pint with one of the lads and it's like, oh, here's the poem.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and then it's the rush to write it down before I forget is the main
yeah,
the
yeah.
main problem. But but it's nice because like then there isn't any pressure and you're kind of you're believing in process of it. So like I kind of just work from an assumption that like there will be another poem. I don't know necessarily where it'll come from or what it'll look like, but I know it'll come along, and there's a bit of faith involved in that.
There so is. I remember being an artist in the early days and writing a lot of my own characters and stuff, and really having this fear that the well would run dry, that it would just be
Mm,
this character, it would never be another character. You know, it's so you're right.
totally.
There is faith. There is yeah, you have to have faith in the creative process.
Yeah, and like I think that's why like sometimes it can become, if you're not careful, it can become destructive. Because I remember when I was really depressed, and I've like moved in and out of depression over the years, but like I remember there was a time when I was like 25, 26. I was writing a lot, but I was really like not in a good place mentally.
Mm.
And there was a part of me that was like, we actually can't leave go of depression, because if we do, then the writing will stop.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it was like that kind of, there's this idea of like, and I think it's completely inaccurate, but this idea of like the tortured artist, that you have to be kind of a mess to be good at this.
Yes, let's just leave that one go for
Yeah, and it's
everybody.
it's not true, but
Yeah.
I
Mm.
understand the draw to that, because if you are in a bad place but you're creating some stuff you're really proud of or that
Mm.
speaks to you, then you might be like, oh, but if I fix this part, then this might go away. Which isn't
Yes.
true, but I understand the thought process, and that's just something you have to be aware of when you're going into the any creative kind of career. That it's like no, you can be like healthy and okay, and you can still create. Like you don't have it's not one or the other.
A lot of comedians suffer really badly with that because
Mm,
they think that if they clean up their lives or they go to therapy or, they become, their perception would be a straighter version of themselves, that they wouldn't be interesting and they wouldn't have enough to say on stage.
mm,
So comics really suffer with that. They just think the more messed up they are, the more it's comedy fodder.
yeah,
Which is not true. I think people have made really amazing work about grief and about going to therapy and,
yeah.
that, yeah. Some of your work is really deeply personal. Like, where do you decide? This is a tricky one, I think, for all artists. Where do you decide what stays sacred and private and what do you publish?
Um, I think for the details of my own life, there's nothing really off limits. So like if
Okay.
it's like anything that's internal going on with me, like if I have an urge to write about it, I'll write about it. The only place I like set limits or like ask questions or verify stuff is like if I'm ever writing about like family or my loved ones, I
Mm,
don't want to like overstep the mark and share stuff that they wouldn't be comfortable being out there. Even if it's part of my own like art form, it's still like
mm,
could be potentially like putting them on blast for whatever reason. So like I'm always careful with the sensitivities of other people. But when it comes to my own stuff, I'm like, I suppose because I've been sharing so like openly for so long, it doesn't really feel like a vulnerability anymore. It
yeah.
doesn't feel like I'm being vulnerable. It's just like, oh, but this is just I'm just comfortable with this. So it
Yeah.
doesn't feel like I'm being vulnerable, which is interesting because when people like, especially in the last few months, like new people coming to the work and them being kind of like almost shocked by the vulnerability. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is just the way things are.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah, so the only limitations would be like around like, are you okay? Like I've written poems with my like parents and shared those and parent and my brother, but like I've always checked with them that they're okay with it before it.
Mm.
Because I don't want them to be like, I'm actually not comfortable with this, and now 500,000 people have already seen it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
That's fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm. I suppose if it's like screenwriting or a story, you can you can hide the names and hide them behind characters.
yeah, yeah,
But if it's
totally.
when
Like, and like even like I'm writing a novel at the moment, and like there are parts of my life that are in the novel, but like all the details of who people are changed because
yeah,
that's it's a fictionalized version anyway, so it's not actually what happened. But all your characters are typically inspired by real people.
yeah,
But it's just make sure to protect people and not, yeah. I mean, I don't think any creative thing I've done has been with the intent to like hurt or embarrass anyone.
absolutely.
So
Oh
like,
yeah,
but you
yeah,
just want to
yeah.
make sure you're not doing that inadvertently as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Can you tell us more about your novel?
Yeah, so it is kind of based on, well, at least starts in the same place as my journey with mental health. So the main character, Sam, his best friend, takes his own life quite suddenly, which happened to me as well when I was 17.
Mm,
And then the novel kind of like, so Sam's life diverts from my life quite drastically, but it follows like Sam's life and how he struggles to cope with that loss, and doesn't really cope with it. And the novel's really a reflection on like the male relationship with emotion and grief and trauma, and how it's kind of always pushed down as opposed to addressed.
mm,
Because I think it's like I've always written about this topic, but I think now is a really important time to write about it because it's kind of top of mind, especially when you had like shows like Adolescence coming out and being very popular. I think we're at a point now where we can talk about this, whereas like we haven't always been able to.
yeah,
And I just wanted to like write on like how that kind of traditional masculine relationship with emotions can be so damaging.
yeah.
That's kind of what the novel's about.
Well, I look forward to it. When do you think you're going to have it released and published?
I
I mean,
don't
no
know. It's
pressure,
like
Dara. I'm not
no,
pressurizing you.
no, no, totally not. I appreciate it. Well, first and foremost, and I can't really release details on this yet, but my debut poetry collection will be the next book that comes out, and then the novel will follow that. So it'll probably still be another couple of years, but there'll be work
Wonderful.
out soon, hopefully.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Well, but you'll obviously come back on when
Cool.
they're published and we'll
Yeah.
chat further about it. We're not
Yeah.
finished yet, though. We're not
Oh
finished
no.
yet. Um, you have a background in applied psychology, linguistics, and obviously a passion for mental health. From your perspective, and obviously you speak about your own personal lived experiences as well. What do you feel like words, and you talked about it in your TED Talk too, that words and creativity play in our healing and well-being?
Yeah. Well, one, I think at the like before all the creative elements, I think how we talk to ourselves and the relationship we have with ourselves really dictates a lot of our healing and our like just mental well-being.
Uh-huh.
Um, I say that because like I think for a long time I had a really poor relationship with myself because
Mm.
there was a part of me subconsciously that didn't think I deserved to be happy because my friend Irby couldn't be because he was gone. So there was a lot of like negative self-talk and like self-sabotage going on, and it was really destructive. So I think how we talk to ourselves is is a baseline that can like be really strong or really weak depending on how we talk to ourselves. And then I suppose like more broadly, like kind of what I touched on the TED Talk, like I think every single person on earth is creative. I just think
Yeah.
we've been kind of like educated to think as creativity is this very narrow thing. And that
Mm-hmm.
narrow thing being art. So like it's either acting or writing or painting or sculpting. Like it's
Yeah.
these, and that is obviously a form of creativity, but how you cook is creative, how you drive to work is creative, how you dress yourself is creative, how you have a conversation is creative.
Mm.
There's creative elements in all of our days, and I think looking at or like coming at life from a creative lens adds this kind of wellspring of well-being because when we create something new, it's inherently good, even if it's created from a negative experience. So
Mm-hmm.
like when I write a poem about like a negative experience, I still get this like rush of good feeling because I've created something, even if it's from that negative experience. So I think having some sort of creative outlet on a daily, weekly basis is a good like just a wellspring of well-being. Like it helps our well-being and it also helps us to process difficult situations and traumas and experiences. Like so there's so much that comes from being creative. And I think why people get stuck in it is because like and I was like this up until the age of like 19. I always thought myself I wasn't a creative person. Like I'm not a
Mm.
creative person. I can't paint, I can't draw. But I think we get hung up on that because we're
Yeah.
not in the mainstream arts that it's like, oh, well, I'm not a writer, so I'm not creative. But like some of the most creative people I've ever met don't do art. You know,
Yeah.
they're like really like they can talk about the most boring subjects in a really interesting way. Like that is creativity to me as well. So I
Yeah.
think
How you
just
dress, even how you dress is
yeah,
creative, you know,
literally, exactly. Like
everything.
so
Yeah.
I think like creativity is to humans what like making honey is to bees. Like that's what we do. We innovate, we
Mm.
create stuff, we build societies. We are just that's our thing. We create.
Mm.
So everyone can do it. And I think just opening up our minds to that kind of reality is positive for our mental health.
I agree. Someone said recently they were admiring another artist's work, and this person is not an artist. And she said, "Oh, I don't have a creative bone in my body." And I just thought, "Oh my goodness, that person has the most beautiful house and home and
Mm.
large family." And she missed the beat of like, "I'm not creative, I'm just a homemaker." And I was like, "Oh my God, no, this person's home is her work of art."
Yeah, yeah.
You know, she poured her whole life into this work of art.
Mm.
And then, just didn't really recognize that. It was so interesting to see because I think it's right. If you can declassify what creativity is,
Mm.
everyone is creative. And
Yeah, because that whole like because obviously like art is creativity, where no one's denying that, but I think where it becomes gay kept is like only art is creative. And I'm
yes,
like, that's just not true. Like
yeah, yeah,
fully not true.
yeah. Um, what has surprised you the most since your career has taken off in spoken word in poetry? Like what surprised you the most about, I suppose, maybe that industry or about yourself or both?
Um, what I suppose it's interesting, like, and I was only talking about this last night. I was at an event and I was talking to a friend who I haven't really seen in a couple of months. So like a lot has changed for me in terms of like platform in the last couple of months. And you know, you're kind of like I'm at a place now where I'm like everything I've ever wanted from a career is kind of happening,
Wonderful.
which is great.
Mm.
But I never really expected it to be so scary,
Oh
like
yeah.
and overwhelming, like because it's been like 99% positive. Like there's always, especially when you're dealing with online, there's going to be some people who say horrible stuff, but like mostly positive. But
Mm.
how overwhelmed I felt by that, even though it's positive, was surprising. And I suppose because we always think of overwhelm in a negative sense, but it's like overwhelm is overwhelm, whether it's happening positively or negatively. So that was surprising.
Uh-huh.
Um, and then like in more specific cases, like I never expected some of the poems that have resonated so much to resonate so much.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
and then I was like reflecting on it, I was like, oh, this is something that like a lot of people are thinking about and feeling, and that's why it's resonated. But you know,
Mm.
sometimes you think you're, and this happens with like mental health as well, very commonly, where you think you're the only one thinking about or experiencing this thing, and then when you share it, it's like, no, I feel like that as well, and I experience that as well. So that's been kind of lovely that it's like, oh, I'm not alone in this, and to be reminded that you're not alone in feeling these things and worrying about, bringing up children in today's world. Like you're not like a lot of people are concerned about that, which
Mm.
I think is very reassuring
Mm.
because sometimes it feels like, especially online, that like the world is going in one very negative direction, but there's actually a majority of people resisting that direction. And I think that's been really,
Mm.
maybe I just I didn't expect to see that, but now that I have seen it, I'm like, well, of course people are
Yeah.
resisting. Of course they are.
Yeah, resistance. I love it. You said actually it was a line that you said in your TED talk as well. It was something like, and I'm not going to get this right, but we're all alone in this together. Was it something like that?
Yeah, so that was there's a rapper named Dave in the UK, and his album was called "Yeah, We're All Alone in This Together,"
Ah,
which always really like resonated with me
yeah.
because, especially in the modern world where we're all, there's a certain element of like being so connected technologically, but feeling so disconnected physically.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and like we're all online, but we're all alone online. Um,
Yeah.
that's always kind of like when I heard that first, I was like, that's such a great way to put that.
Mm, mm,
And it's a good, like, it's not a great place to be, but it's a good starting point because, like, at least there's some form of togetherness in that. We just need to figure out the parts of that are making us feel isolated, which I think, is happening slowly. And
Mm.
people are kind of, taking back their lives and spending less time online and spending more time in nature and with friends. I think that's slowly happening, and
Mm.
kind of, everything comes in circles. Like, so I think we're slowly moving back to understanding the value of community.
Yeah.
I think during the pandemic and the kind of 5 years before it, we'd kind of moved away from community. But I think it's coming back, and
I
that's
agree.
good.
I agree. I think it's coming back, and I think actually whether we like it or not, we'll probably be forced into it,
Hmm.
which is a good thing. It's a positive thing. We'll be forced back into connection and forced back into community,
Yeah,
probably in a decentralized way in more smaller groups. And I think that's a really, really positive
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Mm. We talked earlier about maybe you
Yeah,
performing
fun.
a piece.
For
Would you?
sure.
Oh my goodness, this is so exciting.
Let me just open this up. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna do if I ever have girls.
I just loved it so much, Dara. It was just so wonderful. It really was. This is such a
Oh,
pleasure. Thank you.
an absolute pleasure for me too. Okay. And apologies, I've been a bit sniffly. I've had a cold for like 11 days. It's been horrible. Oh. I always get in the transitions of seasons, I always get a cold. It's so annoying.
High doses of vitamin C there.
Yeah, there we go. If you take anything from this podcast.
Yes, exactly. If you take one thing, it's high doses of vitamin C, everybody.
Okay, so this is if I ever have girls. If I ever have girls, they'll be feared by weak men. But to everyone else, they'll be a consistent friend. They'll never lack meaning. They'll be gentle and kind while breaking every glass ceiling. They'll take up space and they'll like what they like. They won't be taught to reduce themselves or hide. My girls will be feared by weak men. They'll demand respect because they deserve it. They will always know love. They'll never feel they have to earn it. They'll know their value is inherent, has nothing to do with their looks. They will be leaders, be healers, write wrongs, write books. They'll be mothers one day if they so choose, but their value won't be defined by the use of their wombs. They'll be whatever lives in their hearts, and they will know dreams are there to be chased from the start. My girls will know poetry and song. They'll know I will listen when something feels wrong. They'll learn that women are too emotional is an original lie, and they will not grow up with a father who refuses to cry. So yeah, my girls may make weak men shake at the knees. They won't be the women society expects. They'll be the women society needs. And that's that. Thank you.
Thanks for making me cry, Dara. Appreciate that.
Apologies.
No,
Good
it's good.
tears, though.
It's good. Emotions are good to feel. Dara, thank you. It's just the whole conversation has been so wonderful. I've really appreciated you coming on the Live Wild podcast. Oh, wait, we have the Live Wild quick fire round before we head. We want to do that?
Let's do it.
Okay, it's quick fire. Daragh Fleming, do you believe in magic?
Yes.
Oh, love it. If you were an essence, what would you reduce yourself down to be?
Water.
Oh, nice.
Mm.
I've written a note here and I can't see what it is. Oh, what do you stand for?
Equality.
Beautiful. If you were to live wild and free every day, what would be the one thing that you would do?
Wild and free every day. I think I'd get a 99 every day.
Oh my God, that's so joyous. I love it. At 99, I love it. Daragh Fleming, thank you. It's been gorgeous. I really appreciate you coming on.
No, thank you for having me on. Pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Live Wild. If you enjoyed our conversation, make sure to follow the show and share it with someone who might need it today. And if you'd like to go deeper, you'll find all my work for now on Instagram at the Hilary Rose and on my LinkedIn page, with links to both in the show notes, from keynote speaking and corporate facilitation to one-to-one consultations. You can also find details on upcoming events, workshops, and everything happening in the Live Wild community. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only and is not a substitute for professional, medical, or therapeutic advice. Thank you for being part of this community. Stay curious, stay courageous, and as always, live wild.